We're with our favorite professor, Alain Kornhauser, at the Nvidia GPU conference. Alan, a lot of stuff here. I think one of the things that touched me was this whole idea of humans as a backup. They're still going to be needed. Let's start with that and we'll have a conversation.
Well, yes, I think in the end humans do need to be a backup in the very end. But they're like the tow truck that shows up and fixes things and so on. They're really at the very end. I think what we really want to do is put enough intelligence in the vehicle so that, of course, it doesn't crash. But if it gets into a tight zone, it pulls over to the side of the road, or at worst just stops in the middle, and then finally the tow truck, the human, shows up and fixes it. A certain amount of this can be done remotely with teleoperated and so on, but in the end, I think we're still employed as a backup.
Well, and there was a lot of artificial intelligence at the edge. I thought, one of the interesting things, they went from the PX2 to, I think, the Xavier, and then he hinted at another processor coming. It seems like it's getting closer to commercial, though, as you get this, like 2 generations.
That's correct, and most importantly, that it's going to be automotive-grade processors. So, in fact, when you get right down to if you really want to do this, you both have the vibration and thermal issues that you have to deal with. You have to deal with Mother Nature, and she's tough. And if it's really going to go out there and work and provide us mobility and provide the mobility for the 1 billion trips a day that occur here in the United States, you really have to do it for real as opposed to just in the classroom or in the lab. So yes, two nice things. One, the whole processor capability and the whole structure to be able to do parallel processing, to do the AI, the deep learning, and whatever evolutions of those things are, that's really advancing. And more importantly, it's being brought down to the chip level in an environment that, in fact, it can do it with respect to the vehicles themselves.
Well, and that gets to the whole idea of simulation. You talked about the billions of miles. It seems like even that's advanced with the clusters and so forth.
Well, of course, it's advanced, but the billions of miles is not the right question. I mean, most of the billions of miles that we drive are really boring. We know how to handle those. It's the edge cases. It's the corner cases. Those corner cases might be, 3 miles, or, let's say there are 1,000 of those or 10,000 of those, the total accumulated distances, 10,000 miles or something like that. You've got to get those right. You've got to get the situation. My goodness, if you can't see a pedestrian with a bicycle crossing, 3 seconds in front of you reliably, and the whole issue is reliability, then in fact we should get out of this business.
Safety was emphasized. Jensen talked about that, the safety aspect.
We're developing this technology because we believe it will save lives.
Safety is critical. If this isn't going to be substantially safer than what we have today, this business is not going to get anywhere. It's going to stay on the shelf of professors like me. It's never going to make it then, and we're never going to get the benefit of it. It has to be safe. That is a necessary condition. It may not be sufficient because people might not adopt it, but it is absolutely absolutely necessary condition.
Yeah, and in fact, during a press briefing, he talked about the investment. Actually, he thinks it'll go up now because of that crash.
The amount of investment into the seriousness of developing AVs is going to go up.
Well, what it shows is that this is really tough. It is simple. Like many things, 80% is trivial. The last 20% is just takes tough grit and tough work, and that's the situation here, and we have to do the other 20%. 80% doesn't cut it, and in some sense, the ability for us to take our hands off the wheel and feet off the brakes for a little bit of time, yes, we can do it when it's absolutely trivial and there's nobody else, but really the car companies and so on have to get real with us and say, hey, most of the time you better be sitting there paying attention, because this stuff as exists in the vehicles isn't really good enough. What could have happened there in Tempe is that if the vehicle goes above 30 miles an hour, the pedestrian detection system isn't reliable enough, and therefore it's turned off so that you don't get false alarms. And what do you get? False negatives. Whoa, help me.
Speaking of commercial, though, looks like Waymo made some big announcements this morning with Jaguar.
Yes, and I guess many of us have been speculating that they've needed a vehicle manufacturer to be able to deploy the technology stack that they've been working 9 years to do and been working very diligently, which looks like it's a very good technology stack. But you need to put it on a vehicle. At one time they were building their own. They gave that up. They went over and bought some Chrysler Pacificas and then announced they were going to buy a couple thousand more. And so, and if you look at them, they were they were really a nice design because you could have an attendant in the vehicle and passengers in the back, sliding door, easy out, and so on and so forth. So it was a good vehicle to do that. But once you remove the attendant, then basically the front seat is not really utilized, and one would think that they would have to go to another design vehicle and something else. And we didn't know if they had a Foxconn in their hip pocket or the equivalent to a Foxconn to build iPhones, not iPhones, but cars for them. And apparently, this morning's announcement says they chose Jaguar, and wonderful for them. I'm sure it's been in the works for some time, and they're announcing buying 20,000 of these things and saying that they'll be able to handle something like a million trips a day, which sounds about what you can do with 20,000 of these. But again, we have close to 1 billion vehicle trips every day in the nation. One would like to see this service all, and that's probably going to need more like 35 million of these things. Whether or not the growth path from 20,000 to 35 million is they'll do with Jaguar or somebody else, we'll wait and see. But the curve is the hockey stick is about to turn. We've been at absolute zero here, and definitely it's turning.
Well, and it'll be a real test case for a lot of the work you've done with your students in the past as far as efficiency of ride sharing and so forth.
Right, and the whole idea is, I think, I haven't seen the design of what they're doing with Jaguar. I didn't see it released, or maybe I just missed it, but hopefully it is focused on doing ride sharing. It's not just a two-person vehicle that basically will carry one person all the time, but maybe a 4-passenger or 5-passenger vehicle that when demand is low, sure, just like an elevator, you get in by yourself and it takes you. But when demand is high, we sort of get in there and pack in there together and move. And so horizontally, it's the same thing. And given the vehicle management algorithm that will be put on top of that, they'll know that you want to go and I want to go from about the same place to about the same place at the same time. We'll just show up together and we'll get in the vehicle together and we'll have a happy time.
And I look forward to that. But I also look forward to understanding a little bit more about how their teleoperator works.
So would everybody else. Yeah, and I don't know, but you have to assume, and I think they've announced that in fact they have telemetry in the vehicle so that they can remotely do things and operate the vehicle. They might have a emergency off button that shuts it down, or a joystick that allows the vehicle for them to pull it over to the side of the road. Or you really don't need much more than that. If you're at the breakdown level, what you probably want to do is send a tow truck out there. That's what we do now. Hopefully, the probability of that is very infinitesimal, but that's where we have to start. The whole issue is how many people in the room have to be overseeing the people on the outside. Is it going to be 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 or 1-to-4 or 1-to-many and so on? How's that going to evolve? What kind of AI and oversight stuff that really now manages the oversight people that oversight manage, and so on the layers of this thing. So, yeah, and I'm sure they're doing that. That would be the straightforward way to approach this, and I'm sure they're doing it.
Well, it leads to the question of, in that scenario, is 5G needed, or is it a nice to have or a must have?
I think it's a nice to have. I think well, for them, for the remote operation and that remote one with the people, they're going to geofence this thing in places where they have whatever I don't know. They'll put the antennas on there. You know, they won't do it without the communications. I mean, that is just much too much of a risk. Okay, and so where it's going to be geofence is where that works under environmental conditions where the communication is going to work, and if the communication starts breaking down, then you can imagine that maybe the software has it. Hey, all these vehicles need to pull over, and it's like the fog rolling in. If fog rolls in, we shouldn't drive in it. These vehicles shouldn't drive in it. You should just pull over and stop until the fog leaves. So that same sort of oversight must be in on it, and as the communications gets better, then make it bigger. With 5G, it makes it easier, apparently, and so you take advantage of it. So yes, better communications is valuable. The communications that we have now is sufficient to do it, and to at least in some areas to move forward and learn. The biggest thing that we need to do with respect to what happened last week is that we need to learn from it. And it's not only Uber that gets to learn from it, it should be everybody else. So Uber really has to release all of their information, absolutely come clean. We'll give you a break on this thing. It's enormously unfortunate. Of course you didn't think this was going to happen, but geez, don't bury it. Please. I mean, everybody needs to learn of this one, and this should be sort of an agreement among everybody in this field that when we trip over a corner case, we'll take our black eyes from it, but everybody, here's the actual data. Don't send us a dash cam of what happened. I mean, I hope that's not what their system is operating over. Send us the real video, the real LiDAR, the real radar that went on, and make that available so everybody can benefit. This shouldn't be a race as to who can be the safest. Everybody should be safe. Let's race about who can make it the cheapest and better, in other ways. But safety should be a cooperative effort, not a competitive effort.
Well, and this is one of the unique technologies where everything is recorded, right? So you actually have that capability that you wouldn't have in other areas.
I hope so, and I hope that I hope they don't just throw it away. I mean, if they did, we shouldn't design it that way. What are you doing? I mean. And they didn't. Well, I don't know. I mean, what do I know?
Well, it's interesting because one of the comments that Jensen made today was data is the new source code, I think is his comment.
Well, I think data is very important here. I mean, now we have the opportunity to have a data stream that's associated with the reality experiences that we have. And so therefore we can then take those data and recreate that reality and maybe modify it and maybe make it more robust and deal with more things. But it's based on the actual reality of the data, and that's the important piece of the darn thing.
Well, it's always great to get your realistic perception.
Happy to see you.